So the action threads are very, very loose. As you can see, they're very sloppy. A lot of play, and you can feel, I don't know if you can hear it in the video, but there's a lot of grit and something, I don't know what they use to pack in those threads, maybe to take up some of the slop that they created by overcutting, I don't know, but there's a lot of gritty substance like sand or something in the threads and the receiver. Back here, focus on the back end. So you can see this goes, I don't know if you can see how much that's moving, but the rear, the tang can move over 1/4 of an inch left and right on those threads. Also, you can see there's a lot of Cerakote and media blasting material that was left in the counter bore and apparently on the threads as well. I don't know what they did there. Just a mess. It's all brand new here. The muzzle brake was over-timed, so instead of the top circular vents pointing straight up at 12 o'clock, they're way out to the left. The seam on the muzzle brake is terrible, not blended, sharp step. So here's the glass bedding job. It's extremely rough, uneven, and textured. Then it was spray painted. I'm not quite sure why they spray painted the bedding work, but again, this is all brand new, just as the customer gave it to me. Obviously no pillar contact on top. You can see where that's rubbing off. Very, very rough. And somehow on this side the surface is very lumpy and textured, so obviously the receiver is flat and smooth right through there. I don't know how they got that to be so lumpy. It feels like you put the bedding compound in there with your fingers. In front of the barrel pad there, it looks like they cut that. I don't know what they used to cut that. It looks like maybe a cutter disc on a Dremel. And the barrel channel itself has been augered out and cut up and chopped up. I'm not quite sure why. Then it was spray painted, and the outside edges of the barrel channel looks like they slipped and ran out a couple times and knocked out some chips and flakes on the outside of the finish. So here's their bottom metal. It's got a release tab that has a very, very sharp edge right on the back side, right where you touch it, it's the side that you push against is very sharp, and it's I don't know if you can tell in the video, but it's very rough. It's rough around the edges, I guess. It looks like it was cut with a Dremel. It wasn't machined, obviously. It's cut by hand, and very sloppy and not consistent in the angle of the bevel or the circumference of the radius. Then the screws that they use for it, very small, shallow little heads on them, and they don't have the standard T30 Torx head. They just have a tiny little Allen wrench head in there that strips out very easily. Another problem too that they had was the bedding compound was pushed all the way down through the insides of the pillars, so that they had the screw threads were completely encased in bedding compound. So in taking the screws out of the receiver, I had to unscrew them all the way out. So in other words, they weren't free floating through the insides of the pillars. they were threading through bedding compound all the way to the receiver. So it wasn't pinching or pulling from the head of the screw to the receiver. The scope base holes are usually enlarged from the 648 factory holes to larger 8x40s. That's a normal procedure for action truing job, I think, from most of us. These were not done. I'll take care of that. Okay, I've got the barrel dial indicated, nice and straight. That's a PT&G range rod. This is reading true. Got a 1/1000th indicator mic on the front, 1/2,000th on the back, and we're nice and straight here. Okay, now that I know the center line of the bore is dialed in perfectly straight and true, I set my 1/2,000th indicator right up inside the chamber, just inside there, right at the base, just inside the bolt nose counterbore. I'm going to turn this so you get those light reflections out of the way. That's a 1/2,000th indicator. So that chamber is damn near, what is that, 4 thousandths? Kind of hard to read while I'm looking at my camera at the same time. But I think that's 3.5 thousandths. 3.5 thousandths out at that location. I've seen enough. I'm not going to even look any further. I'm just going to go ahead and chop this off, set this back, and start over. So with the bore dialed in perfectly straight, you can see how much run out there is in that chamber just with the naked eye. You don't even need to put an indicator on it. You can see it just wobbling all over the place. So now the new barrel work is complete. The threads are cut, perfect fit. Chamber's done, minimum headspace. Bolt nose counterbore, chamber, everything's polished out and straight. Okay, so we got all the previous bedding, except for in the recoil lug area there. We're going to do that in the mill right now, but we got all the bedding hogged out of there, and you can see there are no pillars. That was just a skim bed. You can still see all the butchered work down in the magazine well. We're going to try to clean that up. I don't want to remove too much material though. And you can see they left very little material left remaining there at that little bridge across. They chewed out most of that already, so I tried not to take any. I didn't want to take any more of it. But now we're going to go ahead and drill it out for pillars and do a proper pillar bedding job. Okay, so we ground out the previous bedding job and did a new pillar bed job on it. There were actually no pillars in the gun before. It didn't even have the little pillars that McMillan puts in there if you ask for them. So we drilled them out, put new aluminum pillars in there, tried to clean it up in the mill as best we could, but they had so many deep areas that were gouged out and packed full of bedding and spray paint. I didn't want to remove any excess material just to make it look prettier. So I just removed the minimum amount, skimmed around the inside edges in my mill to make that at least look somewhat better. See, it's just making a little bit of contact right there on top of the pillars. Then underneath, again, just barely making contact with the pillars. Bedded that in as well. Apparently this was inletted for a Badger bottom metal by hand, I guess. I don't know. There was a lot of big gaps and spaces, and anyway, so it's all fixed up now. It seats in there well. It's perfect. I changed the bottom metal because his factory, or the bottom metal that came with the rifle from the original builder, was just so bad in so many ways that I figured it wasn't even usable. The screws that they use have these tiny little Allen heads that would obviously strip very easily. So I got him a Newman Precision bottom metal, and it obviously has the 3/16 Allen screws, which are more common. See, much larger. Just a better product in every way. Okay, now the rifle is complete. We completely rebuilt it from start to finish. So the receiver needed a lot of work. I don't know what they did to the receiver. At first I thought they trued it because I saw some machining work, or evidence of some machining work, but it wasn't true. It wasn't square to the center line, so the more I looked, the more I dug into it, I just went ahead and did a complete action truing job on it, and it needed everything. The face of the receiver had been worked on, but it wasn't square to the center line. There was a high spot on one side, so I took care of that, put in a new recoil lug, a precision ground recoil lug. The scope base holes I left alone because the base that the customer provided it was already set up for 648s. I just left that alone. It's fine. Then I cut that muzzle brake off that they had on there and put on a R&D precision rad brake. So that's it. It's done. Took it out to the range and shot several groups under half minute with Federal Gold Medal Match 168 grain ammo. So that's it. It shoots and we're done.